So today, let's have a look at new list. People who imaginary meeting the Buddha. Albert Camus, his existential struggle and the absurd. Vivienne Westwood, creativity, rebellion, and counterculture. Coco Chanel, identity and transformation through art and style. Ella Fitzgerald, freedom and joy through music. Franz Kafka, alienation, absurdity, and inner torment. George Orwell, power, truth, and morality in a dystopian lens. Beatrix Potter, simplicity, nature, and creative storytelling. Maria Rilke, solitude, poetry, and inner life. James Baldwin, race, identity, and social justice. Simone Weil, mysticism, suffering, and self-sacrifice. Liliane Bettencourt, wealth, legacy, and familial conflict. Gianni Versace, opulence, creativity, and legacy. Here's the start of the Meeting the Buddha dialogues using this new list. Let's do them one at a time in the format as before. Let's begin with Albert Camus and go on from there. Albert Camus versus the Buddha, the philosopher of absurdity versus the teacher of liberation. Contrasting worldviews. Albert Camus, the existential philosopher, embraced the absurdity of life, arguing that meaning is constructed, not inherent. He wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. The Buddha, in contrast, taught that clinging to struggle binds one to suffering. Birth is suffering, decay is suffering, death is suffering. The cessation of craving is liberation. While Camus found dignity in defiance, the Buddha offered freedom through insight and letting go. Quirk and resilience. Camus, his work explored humanity's resilience in the face of absurdity, as seen in The Plague. He described human solidarity as a form of rebellion against life's meaningless. The Buddha, too, valued compassion and interdependence, but pointed to wisdom beyond rebellion. Rebellion clings to the world. Wisdom lets it pass like a shadow. Imagine Camus asking, if life is absurd, why not embrace it? The Buddha might reply, embrace it, but see it clearly. Its impermanence, its emptiness, and its potential for release. Attachment to rebellion. Camus found identity in resistance, arguing for an engagement with life's paradoxes. The Buddha, however, recognized rebellion as another form of clinging. The mind that grasps at meaning fights shadows. The liberated mind neither grasps nor resists, but dwells in peace. Where Camus wrestled with absurdity, the Buddha invited stillness. When the winds of craving cease, the waters of the mind become clear. Sutta twist. The Buddha might have shared the Dhamma Chakra Pavatana Sutta, setting the wheel of Dharma in motion, which reveals the Four Noble Truths. Understand the cause of suffering, abandon craving, walk the path of liberation. Camus, skeptical, might respond, but what remains when we let go of the struggle? The Buddha, smiling, would say, what remains is peace, not created, not destroyed, but realized. Summary. This comparison contrasts Camus' existential acceptance of struggle with the Buddha's teaching of release from it, revealing two profound but divergent approaches to life's paradoxes. let's have a look on. Vivienne Westwood is another person. She's also rebellious. Vivienne Westwood versus the Buddha, the Queen of Rebellion versus the Teacher of Simplicity. Contrasting creativity, Vivienne Westwood, the iconic fashion designer, built her legacy by challenging norms and embracing rebellion. She declared, "The only way to deal with the world is to rebel against it." The Buddha, too, rebelled, but against inner delusion rather than outer systems. True rebellion is the mind's release from greed, hatred, and delusion. While Westward reshaped fashion, the Buddha reshaped the mind, showing the path to simplicity. Quirk and vision. Westwood's designs blend the provocative and the purposeful, often with environmental activism. She said, "Buy less, choose well, make it last." The Buddha might see echoes of his teachings on minimalism and non-attachment. Possessions weigh down the heart. Let go, and the burden lifts. Imagine Westwood asking, "But isn't expression vital to living?" The Buddha could reply, "Expression arises from stillness, but peace lies beyond even expression." Attachment to impact. Westwood's life was dedicated to leaving a mark. The Buddha, however, taught that clinging to legacy binds one to suffering. The wish to be remembered is a shadow of craving. True freedom leaves no trace. It inspires all. While Westwood sought to disrupt through design, the Buddha sought to dissolve through wisdom. Sutta twist. The Buddha might offer the Saleka Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 8, which speaks of simplifying life by reducing unwholesome qualities. Be like the earth, unshaken by what is thrown upon it. Westwood, intrigued, might respond, "How do I simplify while creating beauty?" The Buddha, serene, could answer, "Create, but let go of needing to own what arises." Summary. This dialogue contrasts Westwood's creative rebellion with the Buddha's simplicity, revealing that even in expression, freedom lies in letting go. Coco Chanel versus the Buddha, the architect of style versus the teacher of contentment. Contrast in transformation. Coco Chanel redefined fashion, creating timeless elegance from simplicity. She claimed, "Luxury must be comfortable, otherwise it is not luxury." The Buddha, however, taught that comfort is fleeting. Contentment is the greatest wealth. Simplicity is the highest elegance. While Chanel transformed outer appearances, the Buddha guided beings to inner peace. Quirk and reinvention. Chanel was a master of reinvention, turning her struggles into iconic success. The Buddha, too, embraced reinvention, not of self-image, but of the mind. Rebirth is not really life to life, but also moment to moment. Each moment a chance to awaken. Imagine Chanel asking, "Can style bring liberation?" The Buddha might reply, "Style can delight the senses, but liberation frees the heart." Attachment to image. Her life and brand revolved around creating a lasting legacy of beauty. The Buddha taught that clinging to an image, even elegant ones, leads to suffering. Like a flower, beauty fades. Cling to not what must change, and you will know freedom. Where Chanel curated timeless designs, the Buddha offered timeless truths. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Vasata Sutta, the Sangyutta Nikaya 3.9, which discusses the qualities that truly define a person, not by outer garb or outer name is one known, but by actions and wisdom. Chanel, thoughtful, might respond, but isn't beauty in eye of the beholder? The Buddha could answer, true beauty arises when the heart beholds clearly, free from craving. Summary: Chanel's pursuit of outer elegance contrasts with the Buddha's teaching of inner contentment, showing the fleeting nature of beauty and the enduring peace of release. Ella Fitzgerald versus the Buddha, the queen of jazz versus the teacher of harmony. Contrast in freedom. Ella Fitzgerald, with her extraordinary voice and improvisational brilliance, embodied freedom in music. She said, "It isn't where you came from, it's where you're going that counts." The Buddha, too, valued freedom, but cautioned against forward chasing. Freedom is not in going anywhere, but by an understanding where you are. Quirk and joy. Fitzgerald brought joy to countless audiences with her scat singing and improvisations. The Buddha, while recognizing joy, pointed beyond it. Joy delights the heart, but freedom calms it. Both are needed, yet one endures. Imagine Fitzgerald asking, "Doesn't music lift us beyond suffering?" The Buddha might reply, "It lifts, but it fades. Yet the silence after the music, there lies peace, attachment to mastery." Fitzgerald's dedication to her craft brought her unmatched mastery, but the Buddha warned against clinging even to skills. What is mastered will fade. What has released remains free. Where Ella Fitzgerald brought harmony to music, the Buddha sought harmony within. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, SN 56.1, which speaks of balance about life's path, neither indulgence nor denial. Walk the middle way. Fitzgerald might ask, can the middle way have rhythm? The Buddha might smile and say, the rhythm is found when the extremes fall silent. Summary: Fitzgerald's, her music, freedom and joy contrast with the Buddha's harmonious middle way, both offering glimpses of transcendence in their own forms. Let's continue with someone else, another artist. Let's have a look at Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka, very interesting person. Imaginary meeting with the Buddha. Franz Kafka versus the Buddha, the chronicler of the absurd versus the teacher of clarity. Contrast in perception. Franz Kafka explored the alienation and absurdity of human existence, writing in the trial, "It's only because of their stupidity that they are able to be so sure of themselves." The Buddha also recognized life's challenges, but offered clarity instead of despair. The world is entangled in suffering because it clings to what cannot last. While Kafka illuminated the rays, the Buddha showed the exit. Maze. Kafka's words, steeped in unease and ambiguity, reflected his inner turmoil. The Buddha, too, began his path with unease, questioning the nature of suffering. However, he moved toward resolution. To see clearly is to untangle the knot of the mind. Imagine Kafka asking, "What if there is no resolution?" The Buddha might reply, "The mind that seeks resolution is bound. Let it rest, and peace will unfold." Attachment to despair. Kafka's role often reflected a resignation to life's absurdities. But the Buddha saw this despair as a barrier. Despair is a shadow cast by clinging. When clinging ceases, so does the shadow. Where Kafka chronicled the labyrinth, the Buddha dissolved it through insight. The sutta twist. The Buddha might share the simile of the snake, Ala Gadupama Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 22, which cautions against holding onto teachings or anything too tightly. Grasping at a snake like grabbing a snake by the tail, it brings harm instead of freedom. Kafka, curious, might respond, and if the snake is all we have? The Buddha would reply, the snake is not yours to hold. Let it pass, and no harm will come. So summary, Kafka's existential longing is contrast with the Buddha's clarity, highlighting the difference between chronicling suffering and transcending it. George Orwell versus the Buddha, the watchman of truth versus the teacher of liberation. Contrasting truth, George Orwell exposed the corruption of power and the fragility of truth in works like 1984, declaring, in the time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. The Buddha, too, valued truth, but pointed beyond worldly struggles. The truth that ends suffering is not in the world, but in seeing through it. Quirk and vigilance. Orwell's vigilance against totalitarianism reflected his deep moral commitment. The Buddha shared this vigilance, but turned it inward. Guard the mind as a city is guarded, for within it lies the root of all suffering. Imagine Orwell asking, how can we fight deception without vigilance? The Buddha might reply, fight, but not with anger. A clear mind is the greatest weapon. Attachment to resistance. Orwell's life was shaped by his resistance to oppression. But the Buddha saw resistance as another form of bondage. To resist is to be tied to what you resist to. Let go of hatred, and only wisdom remains. Where Orwell confronted power, the Buddha dismantled its illusions. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Brahmajala Sutta, Digha Nikaya 1, which discusses the entanglement of views and the freedom of letting go. The wise one sees all views as snares, choosing them, and so remains free. Orwell, skeptical, might respond, that doesn't freedom require resistance? The Buddha could answer, true freedom is unshaken by the need to resist. Summary, Orwell's pursuit of truth contrasts with the Buddha's liberation through non-clinging, revealing true ways to navigate the corruption of power. Let's move to Beatrix Potter, the teller of tales versus the teacher of timelessness. Contrast in storytelling. Beatrix Potter brought simple, timeless stories to life, saying, there is something delicious about writing the first words of a story. The Buddha, too, was a storyteller, but his tales pointed beyond time and identity. Stories can delight. But liberation lies in what is then told. Quirk and love of nature. Potter's love of nature infused her works with authenticity, reflecting life's simplicity. The Buddha shared this reverence for simplicity. The forest is a place of peace. Those who dwell there hear the truth of silence. Imagine Potter asking, "Can stories teach wisdom?" The Buddha might reply, "They can guide, but wisdom must be lived to be known." Attachment to creation. Potter's identity as a storyteller reflected her deep attachment to her craft. The Buddha taught that even wholesome attachment binds. The joy of creation is fleeting. What remains when the creation fades is where freedom begins. Where Potter nurtured tales, the Buddha nurtured liberation. Sutta twist. The Buddha might offer the Jataka tales, stories of his past lives, showing the progression towards awakening. Every story is a step. Its meaning unfolds only when the journey ends. Potter, intrigued, might ask, does the ending matter more than the story? The Buddha might smile and say, the ending is freedom from the need for stories. So in summary, Beatrix Potter's storytelling contrasts with the Buddha's timeless wisdom, illustrating the balance between creation and the letting go. Rainer Maria Rilke versus the Buddha, the poet of solitude versus the teacher of peace. In contrast in solitude, Rilke embraced solitude as a path to creativity, writing in letters to the endpoint for one human being to love another. That is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks. The Buddha also valued solitude, but saw it as a path to peace. Alone we are born, alone we pass. In solitude lies the seed of awakening. Quirk and reflection. Rilke's poetic reflections on life and love capture the depth of human emotion. The Buddha recognized the beauty of reflection, but pointed beyond. Reflection reveals the ripples of the mind. Wisdom comes then. Imagine Rilke asking, can solitude ever be enough? The Buddha might reply, solitude is enough when the mind is at peace. Attachment to longing. Rilke's poetry often explored longing and the search for meaning. The Buddha saw longing as a hindrance. Longing binds the heart to what it cannot grasp. Release it, and you will find what you seek. Where Rilke found inspiration in yearning, the Buddha found freedom in its absence. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Saparisa Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 113, which describes the qualities of a noble person who lives skillfully, balancing solitude with wisdom. Such a one is alone, but not lonely, calm, but not complacent. Rilke might ask, isn't longing what makes us human? The Buddha could answer, longing fades when humanity sees its deeper truths. In summary, Rilke's poetic solitude contrasts with the Buddha's peaceful solitude, revealing two paths to understanding the self and beyond. hope you're benefiting from these imaginary scenarios. The Buddha could also then meet James Bond, Simone Weil, Liliane Bettencourt, Gianni Versace, James Baldwin versus the Buddha, the witness of injustice versus the teacher of equanimity. Contrast in engagement, James Baldwin, the eloquent voice of racial and social justice, said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." The Buddha, while acknowledging the pain of the world, sought liberation from it. The mind, caught in craving and aversion, perpetuates suffering. Freedom comes from understanding and letting go. Quirk and passion. Baldwin's fiery passion for truth and justice burned brightly in his works, such as The Fire Next Time. The Buddha, too, sought truth, but with a serene approach. The fire of anger burns the bearer most. Let it cool, and clarity will arise. Imagine Baldwin asking, "How do you fight injustice without rage?" The Buddha might reply, "By understanding the roots of injustice and responding with wisdom, not hatred." Attachment to justice. Baldwin's life revolved around confronting systemic injustice. The Buddha might view this as noble, but warn against clinging. Justice, sought with hatred, binds one to suffering. Justice, rooted in compassion, liberates both self and others. Where Baldwin illuminates oppression, the Buddha illuminated its deeper cause. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Kakachupama Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 21, which describes enduring harm with equanimity, even if bandits were to saw your limb by limb. Do not let anger arise. Baldwin, reflective, might ask, is there no room for righteous anger? The Buddha could reply, anger may arise, but do not let it consume. Just as guided by wisdom at last outflames. Baldwin's fight for justice contrasts with the Buddha's path of equanimity, offering a vision whereby passion and wisdom can unite for lasting change. Simone Weil versus the Buddha, the mystic of suffering versus the teacher of the end of suffering. Contrasting suffering. Simone Weil, a mystic and philosopher, wrote, "To suffer is to exist." Her works often explored the redemptive power of pain, but the Buddha, while recognizing suffering's reality, taught its cessation. Suffering arises with craving and ceases with its abandonment. It is not the essence of life, but a condition of ignorance. Quirk and devotion. Weil's life was marred by extreme self-denial and hunger for spiritual truth and solidarity with the oppressed. The Buddha, too, walked a path of renunciation, but found balance. Neither in indulgence nor self-torment leads to liberation. The middle way brings peace. Imagine while asking, isn't suffering necessary for transformation? The Buddha might reply, suffering is a teacher, but not a destination. Transformation lies in understanding. Attachment to pain, while often embracing suffering as a pure form of purification, but the Buddha cautioned against glorifying it. Clinging to pain is still clinging. Release it, and freedom will follow. While was seeking divinity through suffering, the Buddha through seeking liberation from it. A sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Dhamma Cakkappavattana Sutta, SN 56.11, introducing the Four Noble Truths. Understand suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path. While contemplative might ask, without suffering, what would refine the soul? The Buddha, serene, could answer, the soul does not refine, it releases, and what remains is peace. Summary. While's embrace of suffering contrasts with the Buddha's path of its cessation, offering two profound but divergent approaches to transformation. Liliane Bettencourt versus the Buddha. The billionairess of beauty versus the teacher of inner wealth. Contrast in wealth. Liliane Bettencourt, heiress to the L'Oreal fortune, symbolized immense material wealth. She once said, in need, money does drive people crazy. The Buddha, however, saw material wealth as fleeting. True wealth is contentment. Greed leads to more hunger, not satisfaction. Quirk and legacy. Bettencourt's life was marked by philanthropy, but also family conflicts over her fortune. The Buddha, valuing generosity, warned against attachment to legacy. What you give with a pure heart creates freedom. What you cling to creates suffering. Imagine Bettencourt asking, how do you enjoy wealth without being trapped by it? The Buddha might reply, by using it wisely and knowing what to let go. Attachment to power. Bettencourt's struggles with control over her legacy reflected a common human attachment. The Buddha would caution, power over others is an illusion. The only power worth having is mastery over the mind. While Bettencourt influenced the world of beauty, the Buddha sought to reveal the inner beauty of wisdom. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Maha Mangala Sutta, SN 2.4, which lists blessings beyond material wealth. To be content, to live ethically, to seek wisdom. These are the highest blessings. Bettencourt might reflect, but doesn't beauty inspire us? The Buddha could reply, true beauty is found in kindness and wisdom, which never fades. Summary. Bettencourt's material wealth and legacy contrast with the Buddha's teachings on inner richness, revealing the fleeting nature of external treasures. Gianni Versace versus the Buddha, the designer of dreams versus the teacher of reality. Contrast in creation. Gianni Versace, he revolutionized fashion with bold, extravagant designs, saying in the past, people were born royal. Now, royalty comes from what you do. The Buddha, while recognizing creativity, warned against attachment to the external. What you do is fleeting. Who you are beyond doing is timeless. Quirk and opulence versus his flair for, though that opulence created a legacy in the fashion world, the Buddha too left a legacy, but one of simplicity. Simplicity cuts through distraction. The mind, adorned with wisdom, outshines all jewels. Imagine Versace asking, "Can't art bring liberation?" The Buddha might reply, "Art inspires, but liberation is found when inspiration turns inward, attachment to legacy, versus his identity was tied to his creation." The Buddha, however, taught identity clings to what is impermanent. True peace comes when identity dissolves. Where Versace's built dreams of beauty, the Buddha revealed the beauty of awakening. Sutta twist. The Buddha might share the Vatupama Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 7, which uses the metaphor of a pure cloth to describe the mind free from defilement. Cleanse the mind, and its radiance will shine brighter than any garment. Verses entrained might ask, isn't beauty worth preserving? The Buddha could answer, the beauty that does not fade is the peace of a pure mind. In summary, Versace's bold creations contrast with the Buddha's teaching of simplicity, offering a reflection of the transient and the timeless. Thank you. I hope this has brought these through these imaginary meetings of contemporary figures meeting the Buddha and their imagined dialogue. Hopefully we can understand more about the application and the attitudes that make the Buddha's teachings outstanding and contemporary and relevant. So thank you very much for listening.